All right, CNT125, we're working on our switches and VLAN lab. In the last podcast, we put some clients in, and we did some client testing, and we found as these nodes are in different VLANs, they don't communicate. And we also did one last test at the end, just to see a client here on VLAN 10, this client over here on VLAN 10 on this switch. When we tried to ping a client on this switch on VLAN 10, it was not successful. And the reason is, this link here between the two switches, we haven't told the switches what to do with VLAN traffic. So the switches are like, oh, I don't know what to do with that. So we're now going to tell the switches what to do with this link between the two switches, this link between them, what to do with VLAN traffic. And here's the gist. We have VLANs configured, but as the traffic moves between the two switches, the switches don't know how to handle it. So we're going to implement on this link between there, this crossover link between the two switches, we're going to implement what's called IEEE 802.1q frame tagging, which means we're going to tell the switch, hey, start frame tagging stuff. So any traffic leaving this switch from, say, VLAN 10, it'll tag it as belonging to VLAN 10. And when it gets to this switch, the switch will go, oh yeah, I have VLAN 10. I'll pass the traffic to VLAN 10 ports, but nothing else. Almost kind of like a luggage tag as luggage goes to the airport. The tag lets the handlers and the computer systems know what plane this goes on. So we're going to implement frame tagging on those ports for that link between the two switches. And in Cisco world, we call that a trunk. A VLAN trunk is what we call that. So we're going to need to go into both switches. We'll start with one, and we're going to tell this port up here to do trunking, which is IEEE 802.1q frame tagging. All right, so on the switch on the left, config T, and we need to select that interface, this interface right here, which on this switch is gigabit 01. So on here, we're going to say interface gigabit, oh my goodness, gigabit 01, and we're going to tell it switch port mode, and I'm going to do a question mark here just to show you there is actually a couple options we could do here. Access, dynamic, or trunk. We are going to do trunk, which trunking for Cisco is this IEEE 802.1q frame tagging. So we're going to implement trunking on this port. That has been done. I'm going to exit, and we're going to take a look at the show run. When I do that, I'll come down here to this gigabit 01 port, and we'll notice switch port mode trunk. Okay. Now, I'm going to look at a show VLAN real quick while we're here, and note that gigabit 01 is no longer in VLAN 1, and it doesn't show up in the other VLANs. It's kind of like its own thing now, because it's been told to please do frame tagging with that. And while I'm here, I'll do a copy run start so I don't lose my progress on this switch. I'll do a save up here too, and I'm going to do the same thing on this switch. You notice this switch is like, it doesn't know what to do because it's not the same as the other switch. So we'll do enable, config T, interface. This is also gigabit Ethernet 01, and I can double check it up here to be sure. If I hold it over there, we'll see that's gigabit 01. Oops, get back here. And we're going to say switch port mode trunk. Okay, exit, and we'll do a show run on this guy, and we should see next to that this gigabit 01 that is trunking. And if I do a show VLAN, I should also see that port is no longer, oops, there we go. It's no longer associated with any VLAN. I don't see the gigabit 01 port up there anywhere, which means it is doing this frame tagging thing. So copy run start on this guy. Excellent. Now that I have trunking done on both, let's now hover our mouse over, which is kind of what we were doing the show VLAN, but we'll hover the mouse over anyway. And we'll notice down here under the gigabit 01, you'll notice the link is up, but if you look under the VLAN line, it's not assigned to anything. You'll see it's not in 10, 20, 31. It just has a line through. And that's our clue, that's our cue that has been set for trunking. I'll do the same thing over here, and I'll see gigabit 01. It's not in VLAN 1, 10, 20, 30. It's its own thing. So now, conceptually, as traffic leaves PC1 over here from VLAN 10, and it starts to go across this link, this switch on that port is going to tag it. It's going to throw a little tag on it saying, hey, this is coming from VLAN 10. So when it gets to this switch, it'll read that tag and go, oh, VLAN 10? I know what to do with that. I'll let it go out these ports that are associated with VLAN 10, and that traffic would actually get there. So let's try that. Let's actually try PC1 in VLAN 10 over here to PC4 in VLAN 10. Let's give it a whirl. It did not work before. Let's try it now. And look at that. It works. So what it means now, and actually we'll try PC2 here over to PC4. Or excuse me, PC5. I'll get it yet. And it now works. And we'll try this one over here. PC3 to PC6 should now work. And it does. So, as traffic is leaving this workstation through this VLAN, it tags it, in this case saying it belongs to VLAN 30, gets here, the switch will actually allow it to go to VLAN 30 ports. Which, remember, as we talked before, this allows in a building, like we have first floor 1 here and floor 2 here, nodes on different floors, they can still be grouped into a virtual LAN to be able to communicate with each other. And I still have the scenario of I try to ping, PC1 here to PC2. If I still try to ping PC1 to PC2, the switch won't allow because they are in separate VLANs. And the same would apply for the other switch too. If I try to ping over there to computer 5, if you will, it's not going to let it because computer 5 is in VLAN 20. So the VLANs now, 10, 20, 30, 10 cannot talk to anybody else but 10. But since we've trunked over here, 10 can talk to 10 on this switch, but it can also talk to 10 on this switch. So that trunking is allowing us in a multi-floor, multi-wing environment. The nodes scattered around the building, as long as they're in the same VLAN, it will allow them to communicate. And that's what we're doing here. We're trying these connections. So there, there is your trunking. The only last thing to do in this lab is gather our configs for submission. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to go to this switch over here, first floor switch, and we're going to, as it shows you, we're going to do a show run and a show VLAN, and we're going to capture them and put them into a text file. So we'll do a show run, spacebar till I get the whole config, and I'll do a show VLAN because I want to see both. The show run is going to show me as I scroll up here. It'll show me all your ports assigned, and it'll show me the trunking, but it doesn't show me your VLAN names that you configured. So the show VLAN down here will show, I'll make it a little wider for us, it's going to show me that you configured these names correctly. That's what that's going to show me. So I'm going to scroll up here, and I'm going to gather all of that. I'm going to gather all of the show run and all the show VLAN, copy it. I'm going to open a new text file. Let's do a file new in there. And I'll make this plain old text. I'll paste it in, and I'll call this guy. I'll put him on the desktop. What did I tell you to call him? I think 2960 floor 1 switch kind of thing. Dash config or something like that. I think that's what I tell you to call it. Something along, yeah, first floor switch config. Something along that lines. That'll work. I'll save that guy. So he's good. I'll do a file new. And again, I'll make him plain text. And I'm going to grab the other switch, the second floor. Show run, show VLAN. And I'll just grab both. And that way I have the config as well as your VLAN assignments by name. So copy that guy. Open my text file again, paste him in. And I'll save him to my desktop again, and we'll call him 2960 floor 2 switch config, something like that. That'll work. .txt. There is both of our switch configs. The other thing we need, we're going to save the packet tracer file, which we should have done early in the lab, but if not, we'll do a file save as, and I'll point him to the desktop as well. Brown VLAN lab packet tracer is fine, something like that. And we'll save him right to the desktop. Make sure, again, you have the PKT in there. And there is our VLAN lab. The only thing left is these questions right here. Some of this is coming from our discussion earlier this week. Some of it's coming from doing the lab now. So answer these questions into a text file, and then you're going to submit your 2 switch configs along with the show VLANs, your packet tracer file, and these questions. And there is basic switch configuration, VLAN configuration, VLAN trunk configuration, which is the majority of switch configuration we will do on our systems this semester.